Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Life Nurturing. Today I'm going to share with you the book summary of Thinking Fast and Slow. Think of your mind like a cool movie with two main characters, System 1 and System 2. System 1 is the quick thinker that reacts fast. Like when you jump at a sudden loud noise, it's the part that you doesn't waste time thanks to our evolution making it great for quick survival actions. Now meet System 2, the thoughtful planner. This character takes its sweet time dealing with decisions and reasoning. It's like the part of your brain that likes to think things through, focusing on careful choices and self control. These two characters, System 1 and System 2, team up in your mind, affecting how you think, judge, decide, and do things. It's basically a lively story where the quick reacting friend hang out with the thoughtful buddy, creating an interesting plot in your everyday thoughts and actions. Okay, let's say you are trying to find a friend in a busy place. When your mind is in focused mode like System 2, it actively remembers details about your friend, making it easier to spot her in the crowd. Now, if you stay focused, you are likely to find her quickly. But if you get distracted and lose that focus, it becomes much harder to locate her. So, how well your brain focus System 2 versus distracted System 1 decide how you act in situation like finding someone in a crowd. The relationship between these two systems determines how we behave. Now let's discuss about the lazy mind, how laziness can lead to error and affect our intelligence. Imagine you are buying a bat and a ball for $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. What's the cost of the ball? The quick thought that might pop into your head is $0.10. But hold on, that's the lazy part of your brain, System 1, being too hasty. The right answer is $0.05. Here is the deal. Sometime our quick thinking System 1 likes to take charge and answering things automatically. But in tricky situation, it should call in the more deliberate System 2 to double check. In the bat and ball problem, System 1 thinks it's easy and skips the teamwork. This laziness happens because our brain likes to use the least energy possible. Checking with System 2 requires more effort, so sometimes our brain skips it. Thinking System 1 can handle it alone. The problem is by being lazy and avoiding the thoughtful System 2, we might make mistakes. Using System 2 is like exercising our brain, and research says it makes us smarter. So when faced with a brain teaser, give your System 2 a chance to shine. It's like a mental workout that keeps your intelligence strong. Autopilot. Why we are not always in a conscious control of our thoughts and actions? Think of your brain like a smart assistant that works automatically without you realizing it. When you see a word like eat, your brain gets primed. And if you then look at SO-P, you likely fill in the blank with soup. This is called priming. Exposure to something makes your brain think of related things. Priming doesn't just mess with your thoughts, but it can also influence your actions. For instance, if you are exposed to words related to being old, you might unknowingly start walking slower. Here is the kicker. Priming happens without you consciously knowing it. It's like your brain takes shortcuts based on what it's exposed to, even affecting how you move without realizing it. So, despite thinking we are in full control, these subtle influences like priming sneak into our mind and impact our choices and behavior. For example, if you're reminded of money, you might act more independently and be less likely to cooperate with others. In simple terms, our brain are subtly guided by the things around us, shaping our thoughts and actions. It's like living in a society where these hidden influences nudge how we behave and contribute the kind of world we live in. Snap judgments. How the mind make quick choices even when it lacks enough information to make a rational decision. Think of a meeting a person named Ben at a party. He is easy to talk, so you assume he is awesome in every way. This happens because our brain like to simplify things. Even if we don't know much about someone, it's like putting a hello on Ben just because he is friendly. Another way our brain takes shortcut is through confirmation bias. If we are asked if someone named James is friendly, we are likely to say yes, even if we have no other information just because the idea was suggested. These shortcuts happen because our brain want to make quick judgments, but it can lead to mistake. We might not have enough information, so our brain fill in the gaps with assumptions and we end up making wrong calls without realizing it. Okay, so our brain have these quick tricks called heuristic to help us make speedy decisions. Usually they are super handy, but sometimes our brain use them too much, leading to mistakes. One type of heuristic is the substitution one. Let's say someone asks, will this woman be a successful sheriff? Instead of really thinking about her skill and background, our brain takes a shortcut and asks, does she look like a good sheriff? It's like judging based on the appearance rather than facts, which can be a mistake. Then there is the availability heuristic. This is when our brain thinks something is more likely to happen just because we hear about it a lot. For example, even though strokes cause more deaths than accidents, we might worry about accidents because we hear about them often. It's like our brain getting tricked by what's easy to remember. In simple terms, heuristics are like quick decisions, shortcuts our brain use, but we need to be careful because relying on them too much can lead to wrong decisions. No head for numbers. Why we struggle to understand stats and make avoidable mistake because of it. Alright, imagine predicting things like the color of a taxi. There is this useful thing called the base rate. It's like the basic stats. So if 20% of caps are yellow and 80% are red, that's the base rate. If you have seen a bunch of red caps, the chance of the next one being red is still high, around 80%, even if you are hoping for a yellow one. But here's the problem. We often forget about the base rate stuff. Like if a football player scores a lot in 1 month, we might expect them to keep scoring a ton, but they'll likely go back to their usual average. So if they score less later, it's not because they are doing worse, it's just going back to the normal level. In simple words, stats can be tricky. We often forget the basic stats and we think things will stay extreme when in reality they tend to go back to the usual, regression to the mean. Past imperfect. Why we remember events from hindsight rather than from experience. Alright, our minds remember things in two ways. There is the experiencing self and the remembering self. The experiencing self keep track of how we feel in the moment, like how does it feel now. It's pretty accurate because it's record our real time feeling. But then there is the remembering self which look back and think, how was the whole thing? This one isn't as accurate because it remembers stuff after it's all done. Now, why does the remembering self boss around the experiencing self? Two reasons. One is duration neglect, where we ignore how long something lasts and focus on specific memory. The second is the peak end rule, where we give too much importance to what happens at the end of an event. Mind over matter. How adjusting the focus of our minds can dramatically affect our thoughts and behavior. Imagine your brain like a switch with two modes, easy and hard. Easy is like cruise control. You are creative but might make mistake. Hard is like being a careful detective. In easy mode, you quick thinker is in charge and happy but a bit forgetful. In hard mode, the logical checker steps up, making you less creative but more accurate. You can control the switch for convincing people, repeat things to make it easy. We like what's familiar. For tricky tasks, switch to hard mode. It's about picking the right mental gear for what you are doing. Taking chances, the way probabilities are presented to us, affect our judgment of risk. Imagine deciding if someone should leave a hospital. Doctors were asked about a person, Mr. John. When they were told there are 10% chance he might be violent, some were okay with it. But when told out of 100 people like him, 10 might be violent, more said he shouldn't leave. It's like when you hear about a medicine, if you hear it has a 0.001% chance of bad stuff, you might not worry. But if told out of 1 lakh kids, one might get messed up, it feels scary, even if it's the same thing. So the way they talk about the chances changes how we see the risk. Not robots. Why we don't make choices based purely on rational thinking? How do we as individuals make choices? Some smart folks said we decide purely based on the reasons, like always picking what give us the best outcome. They thought we are like robots, all super logical. For example, if you like oranges more than kiwi and there's a chance to win one, you will definitely go for the orange, right? Seems simple. But here is the twist. Now picture two people, John and Jenny, both with $5 million. According to these smart folks, they should be equally happy. But here, what it gets tricky. What if John started with $1 million and won big, while Jenny had $9 million and lost some? Do you think they are still equally happy with $5 million? Nope. So there more to how we value things than just being super logically. Our choices are a bit more complicated. Gut feelings. Why rather than making decision based solely on rational consideration, we are often swayed by emotional factors. Imagine you have $1,000 in the first scenario and $2,000 in the second. In the first situation, you have a choose between a guaranteed $500 or a 50% chance of winning $1,000 more. Most people go for the short $500. In the second scenario, you are faced with a certain loss of $500 or a 50% chance of losing $1,000. Here, most people take a risk. Now, if we were super logical, we had make the same choice in both situations. But that's not what usually happens. Prospect theory explains this. In simple terms, our choices are often influenced by how we see gains and losses, based on where we start and how much changes affect us, rather than just looking at the number. That prospect theory. False images. Why the mind builds complete pictures to explain the world, but they lead to overconfidence and mistake. Picture your brain like a painter, creating complete images to understand things, such as imaging a sunny day for summer. When choosing what to wear, we often trust these mental images even if the weather forecasts disagree. We rely on our mental pictures a lot, like wearing shorts on a cool summer day despite the forecast. To avoid mistakes, think about past experiences instead of just trusting your mental images. For instance, recall a time when it was unexpectedly cold in summer and remember what you wore. Also, plan for both success and failure instead of only relying on mental pictures. Be ready with specific actions like bringing a sweater based on real evidence. This helps you make better predictions and avoid relying too much on your imagination. Thank you so much. I hope you love this video, and if you like this video, please share, subscribe